So let's get
Yeah.
into you now. What you
Okay.
said that really struck me, where I just, and I'm not trying to like be disparaging of anyone who runs for office. There were a lot of people who said some great things, but you
Right.
really stuck out to me because you started bringing up clean water.
Hmm.
You started bringing up what's going on right in your community. So,
Hmm.
unpack some of that for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of these things are what what is so basic to being, a moral society, and we heard Bernie saying these things. We heard him talking about these things, but it's different when you're actually with a community and experiencing some of these things. It's like this is their everyday life. So, not having clean water in, a few communities in my district, and not just in my district, in other communities in California, is an issue in the wealthiest state. I mean, and Ron, this is the thing, the solution, it is not a Green New Deal level solution. It's literally like change the pipes, under some of these buildings. It's just not being done. And I'm sorry to say it's because of classism and racism. I mean, they don't value certain communities over others. That's just the truth of it. And when you look at similarly some of the toxic sites, at my school, there's a group, that's doing some Spanish language preferred outreach who I just talked to this morning before this interview, who said the reason I'm supporting, your campaign is because when they're doing redevelopment in Watts, there's lead, in the soil that's being kind of thrown in the air and we're breathing in. And this has been happening for years. Like
So
people,
let me interject really quick here.
right.
But before you continue, give people a little bit of background. Where is? I mean, I know I said AD 64, but where
Right,
is
right.
that exactly? What is your community?
Right, right. So my district is pretty much the South LA area. I mean, especially, I'm sure we're going to get into, the police brutality issues, but there were, I always say it because it's important to remember we don't want to forget the young men that get shot. There were 3 men of color that got shot in my district just in the past 2 or 3 months, which is unfortunate. My district is South LA. It includes Watts, Compton, Wilmington, Carson, Willowbrook, a little bit of the South Bay, a little bit of Gardena, North Harbor, Gateway, Carson, where I live. And then it goes all the way down, like I said, to Wilmington, North Long Beach area. But it's majority people of color. It's 90% people of color. It's about 25% Black and about, 65% Latino and, a small amount of Asian and white population. But that's the makeup of my district. And I'd love to go into, Ron, if there's a good time for it, some of the issues surrounding my district. Is that okay if I
This is
mention
the
that right now? Okay.
time. This is the
Okay.
time,
Yeah.
Fatima. You're on.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't, yeah. So, those are the communities in my district, but there are a lot of issues in terms of, what is happening across California. I'm going to keep saying this because my district is one district, but it is this whole issue in our entire system in California with what we're doing with the wealth that we have in our state, which is we are just really concentrating in the hands of the billionaires and the corporations. And so my district has a quarter of the refineries. We have the highest rate of drilling in LA County. We have 4 times the eviction rate of many communities in LA County. Here's as a teacher, this is also what, is really surprising and really disheartening with the state of our education system. Only half of my district have high school degrees. So now think about what type of jobs they have. Are they more likely to get sick from COVID? What sort of upward mobility opportunities do they have? And when you look at the college grads in the district, it's only 11.7%. I mean, I taught in a school. I always say I taught the smartest kids in the world. And that's why I really fell in love with the community, because I saw students that worked so hard, that did everything right, but the system was stacked against them, in terms of, making sure they had the resources to even get through high school, making sure they had teachers that didn't leave on them, that were making sure they had the resources to, do well on the SATs. I want to, ban standardized tests. That's a whole other issue that really discriminates against kids. But
when I was in junior high, I had a teacher that said that, and now I don't think you mentioned this, but you are a teacher, you are an educator.
Right. Yes, I'm an educator in Watts. Mm-hmm.
And I remember in junior high, I had a teacher that actually said that. We were doing the whole standardized test thing.
Right.
And she just goes, these shouldn't be a thing. We have to do this, but this sucks.
Yeah.
And I was so like, wow. And and she was, of course, one of the first teachers, in my lifetime that taught me to think for myself. Go figure. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, I mean, she sounds like a great teacher because
she
it's
was.
true. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, I tried to do that. I told my kids the same thing. Like, look, to change the system, you have to beat the system. And I said, look, you have to go through these things that are unfair. You have to probably work 5 times as hard as a privileged student in another community, who has a college educated parents. And I say this because I love all of you. Like, that's what I would tell them. I was like, I want you to know what you're up against, but I know that if you do these things and you get there, you can be a leader in your community and change your community. And, that's what my kids did, and, I started a robotics team there, and I saw, the change that a program I created. I mean, it was the first robotics team in Watts, but in the grand scheme of education in California, it was, not a huge program, but we got funding for it. And but the change that made was that all my kids got into a 4-year college in a community which is with only a 3% college grad rate, right? So it clearly shows that if kids are given resources, they have the means and the support, and they'll have the inspiration, to go. And a lot of kids told me to get into college and to go to college. And a lot of kids told me in the college interviews, we talked about robotics. We talked about, staying late coding. We talked about, the relationships we built. We talked about the leadership skills we learned. And that just melted my heart because, it was just one program. And the sad part is, Ron, this is the sad part. When I had that team, the team is still alive. We're called the Terawatts. So at Terawatts6904, we're not super active on social media, but please follow us. Had some media on us. But what was sad is, because my husband's involved in robotics, I was able to get my team grants. We heard of so many teams starting around us in Compton and, Southgate that shut down after the first year, or that we provided space for because the resources weren't there. And it's a microcosm, that's a microcosm example of what's happening, right, to education in our country, in our state, in our communities, is that you have kids that want these programs, you have parents that want these programs, you have teachers that want these programs, but you're coming up against so many roadblocks that are saying, no, you can't do it because we don't have the money. No, you can't do it because honestly, teachers should get paid for some of these things. They're not getting paid enough, first of all. But the commitment that it takes to work in a martial, they should, because thankfully, I'll be honest, and this is me checking my privilege, I was able to, stay after school with my students, do all these things because I was able to afford childcare for my child. My husband's an engineer, and so I was able to give a lot of my free time. But what do you do about, I knew so many teachers at my school who were trying to make rent, who had to work another job. How do you expect that teacher to go the extra mile when they need to in a community like that? I don't blame them because they already are, but it's just like, I mean, the system's just not fair for teachers. It's not fair for students. And honestly, I just want to end with this because it's really important for any, Republicans listening or independents listening or anyone against public education, because
I don't know if you'll get any of that here. You might.
But here's an
a
argument.
lot of people know me by now.
But here's an argument people on the left could use when they talk to their friends who are on the other side, right? Okay. This is really important because honestly, this is going to help our economy. The way we educate our kids, the amount of kids that have a college education is going to determine the type of jobs that are filled. My husband's an engineer. I'm a science teacher. I know as a science teacher, I was able to get a job like this. If you're an engineer, you're able to just get a job because 80% of the jobs in the next decade, Ron, are going to be in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, right? And a lot of those jobs, not all, but, they take either post high school training in terms of trade schools, which I'm for. Those should be free as well. They take some sort of training, whether it's a college education or training, but it is so important to educate our kids because it's going to build our economy in California. I mean, it's just a win-win, right? And the other thing I want to mention, and we didn't bring this up, when people talk about, the Green New Deal, I want to reiterate that it is a job creator. And this is why we also need to educate our kids. It kind of is an intersection of, if we want to meet climate change and get the smartest, most brightest innovators in every community. Because Ron, here's the thing. If we don't treat a kid in Watts like we treat a kid everywhere else, there might be the next scientist there. There might be the next scientist in Compton, in Southgate, in Willowbrook. And we are missing out as a state, as a country, as a global world. I mean, we're missing out. So I think it's just advantages, I'm not just talking about this as, oh my gosh, those poor students. No, this is this is good for all of us from any angle you look at, to educate our kids, for us, for our economy, I mean, for our country and for the world. So I just want to say I mean, it's going to help all of us in
If
every way,
you well,
you
and
know?
I mean, just looking at it as big picture as
Right,
possible and as broad as possible, if you want to have any type of successful democratic experiment at any level,
right,
you need a highly educated populace. I mean,
right,
they go hand
right,
in hand. It's
right.
a no-brainer. And when you break it down
Mm,
at a micro level, it's very obvious. So, and one of the things I found too, so
yeah.
a lifetime ago, I taught community college some on the side, so I
Okay.
have a little bit of
I
experience.
love that.
I taught speech comm and public speaking, so not quite as I chose a much
No,
more
Ron.
lucrative field in the
No,
sciences.
no, Ron. I wanted to tell you that's really important, because a lot of people going to community college, first of all, can't afford 4-year college. Community colleges actually have. I want to shout out the community college teachers, because they have some of the best teachers, and also the what you taught is important. To create confidence. I mean, public speaking is so important. So don't downplay that.
No,
I think
I
that's
was
really
just
important.
poking
Okay, good.
fun
Okay.
at the humanities. It's all in fun. But but
Okay.
but one of the things I learned, and and I know like you were dealing with high school, so these students are a little bit older, and of course because it was, I mean, I had students of all walks. I mean, I had some
Right.
students that were older than me. There were a lot of
Right.
non-traditional students too. But the one thing that I learned, especially true within like the 18 to 22 range, and
Right.
everybody really, when you set a certain bar, students want to meet it. They want
Yes.
to meet it. Like this whole, and I'll be honest, I had a lot of guidelines given to me by the department that I ignored
Me too. Me too.
deliberately. And I said, we are going to follow none of this because this is bullshit, quite
Right.
frankly. And then what was my reward? They offered me a full-time job. And I don't know if they knew that or not. I was like, I don't know if you know I'm breaking every single rule you gave to me. I follow nothing. I mean, this textbook you gave me is a freaking decoration. Half my students didn't even bother buying one, and I'm glad. And like I just did it my way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, we want you to teach full time. Now, here's something else we can talk about with
Hmm.
the salaries of teachers. Like a real other quick, for instance, I didn't accept that job because I made a better salary as an
Hmm.
opening act on the road doing comedy than I
Hmm.
would have as a full-time adjunct teacher.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
telling. And I always use that example. I'm like, guys, I wasn't even a headlining act at that point. I
Right.
was an opener playing small markets. I made a better salary, and let's be honest, it was a little more fun doing stand-up on the road than I would have as a full-time adjunct teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, this is also another thing that's not normal in our country, that we don't value our teachers like as other communities, other countries do.
Mhm.
And I think it goes hand in hand, to reiterate the point, that we need a highly educated, as you mentioned, Ron, work population to have a democracy. And what are we doing? That's why I honestly think, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. This is part of the thing where we don't want a highly educated democracy, because you know what? It's good for, bad policies, it's good for bad systems. And so we keep it that way. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't want to out my husband here, but he's an engineer. When he gets a bonus, at some point, it's as much as my annual salary as a teacher.
Mhm.
Isn't that sad? And that's what made me think, I'm like, I work weekends, I work really hard. I work probably more hours you do in the day. Not that he doesn't work hard, he does, but it's just
Sure.
ridiculous how our society values certain things and not others. And I just think it has to be equal. That's all, not equal, but we have to understand where our morals lie, right? It speaks a lot to where our morals lie. We right now don't value educating our kids. I mean, we simply don't. We also don't value, to bring this up, we don't value our immigrant population, because the jobs they do honestly put food on our table, lets us go to the grocery store and, get those fresh fruits and vegetables, and we don't value that. And I think it speaks to, yeah, it speaks to that we're a society that kind of, and not to, I love what you do, Ron. I'm not trying to down like Hollywood or comedy, because we need that too. But I'm just saying, and I think you would agree that we need to put more value on that. And who knows, maybe if teaching was a 6-figure job, we would get the best teachers, and they would not feel as stressed out all the time. They would feel like they're getting adequately compensated. I mean, so I just think we have to really think about what we value in society.
I always said, what if cities treated teachers the way they treat cops and vice versa? Like, what if it was like, we were thinking about cutting education, but the teachers might get mad. The teachers might get mad and quit, and we can't have that. So I'm sorry. Half our budget is going to have to go to education again this year. And then cops, you're on your own for buying your own weapons. That's
Right.
I wonder if there'd be less police brutality if they had to buy their own bullets. I don't know. Maybe not. But it's a thought.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. I just think it's literally what we value. And I think when you said it, it was funny. Like, imagine we told cops that, like, got to get your own car, got to get your own supplies. I mean, but yeah, you're absolutely right. But instead, what we're seeing is cops that are really well equipped. I mean, to really brutalize communities. We see the opposite, right? What if we well equip our teachers and our classrooms, and have all the technology? I mean, I know one barrier I had at Watts was I was always wishing that my kids had their own iPad. I'll have their own tablet, not to, just shout out Apple, but just, just general like tablet, because, not trying to, plug in Apple here, but
you said your husband's an engineer. Now I'm questioning everything. What are you really trying to do?
I know I'm trying to, no, but like, I mean, have their own tablet. Like, I mean, imagine how much more engaging, like when you meet kids at what really interests them, right? I mean, of course, I tried to always do culturally well, like you did. I never used the textbook, but I always knew that I wanted more for my kids. I wanted to be able to give them technology and do these things that I was simply restricted. At my school, we had to rent out laptop carts, and so there were times I couldn't get a laptop cart. I mean, and it would, so anyway, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, let me ask you, I want to get on to some other policies that are important to you, but first, I want to stay on education for a little bit because you have a science background. Mm-hmm. So how many times a night should I be crying myself to sleep? No, I'm just kidding. My actual question.
Did you not like science? Did you not like science?
Oh, no. My motivation, I mean, because you know how fucked we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what I meant by that. Yeah. No, so my actual question is, what role do you think technology is going to play in mitigating climate change? Because I think it's inevitable. It's going to have to take a big one. And I don't just mean, solar and wind and stuff like that. I mean, like, they're going to have to come up with some technological solutions to what we've done.
100%. I mean, I think, okay, this is what I want to, I'm just going to go to the end goal. I'm not there because I'm not running for Congress, but this is what I think we should do. Do you know how we look at our military budget every year? And we consistently up it and up it and up it. And by the way, Democrats and Republicans vote for it and they approve it. And then all these defense contractors get the money. And what is the money for? Let's make this plane go faster. Let's make something for our wars overseas, right? Wrong.
Let's make sure those Halliburton stocks are good.
Right. Let's make sure, we can have a laser that can see 5 million times as far. Like, why? How is that helping anyone? And so what I want to do, what I envision, and this is the end goal. I'll start by what we can do kind of at a smaller level, but I really think this is an urgency that we need to address it with. We need to take that budget and honestly put it into solving climate change. So what I mean is that our defense contractors need to become climate contractors, right? I'm not saying we don't need to defend our country. I understand every nation needs some element of safety and defense. Okay, that's fine. But the amount that we are putting into the military and into creating planes that can go faster and lasers that can just look a little further is useless in my mind, right? We should be building technology that could suck carbon out of the air because right now we're in a downward spiral. Honestly, I'm not trying to be negative again, but
it's the reality.
It's the reality. It's happening so fast in the rate we're still producing carbon globally. We have to think of what can we do to get rid of carbon in the air? What can we do to drastically change the infrastructure in our country to get clean water to everyone, right? It's every part of the aspect. But we can do this because we have the best and brightest. Like, I'm not trying to sound like Trump here, but as a country, we have innovators in here.
Exactly who you reminded me of.
I know. I was like, I know I'm going to sound like America.
You're
We have the best.
talking about how we need to get carbon out of the air and we need to do something about climate change. That's Trump says that all the time.
No, no, not
That's
that.
what
But
the
I'm
thing.
saying, I mean, we're a nation of immigrants. But I'm saying in our country, we attract, right, the best. I mean, we do, and I'm grateful for that, and that's why my family immigrated here. It was literally like my dad wanted us to get a good education, and my mom, and like I value that as an immigrant. I do. So I'm saying we need to use all that creative energy, all the, honestly, like all the intelligence in all these communities and the folks that are currently working in the defense industry and say, okay, your projects are going to switch now. We need to address climate change. That's not happening right now, Ron, because of the lobby, because of the
Yeah.
oil lobby, because of the natural gas lobby, because of, Wall Street. It's all related. The Koch brothers, I mean, they don't want that to happen. They want us to keep funding the military because wars make money for them.
Yes.
We got to just change our priorities. And like, I know I probably sound crazy right now saying this, but it's what we need to do to address it. And now locally, part of the reason I'm running now on a state level, honestly, I'm going to say it, California is not progressive. We're not. We're really not in the way we
Preaching
address
to the
this.
choir.
What, Ron?
I said you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, we're really not, because we've increased fracking permits drastically. We haven't closed down Aliso Canyon and Poseidon and all these, major sites that are making people sick. We have unclean water. I'll say it again, in the richest state.
Fifth largest GDP in the world.
Right. And
Fifth
with that
largest
money
GDP
being
in the world.
concentrated, I mean, you see it, Ron, even in COVID. Who is getting wealthier and profiting off of COVID? I mean, honestly, it makes me sick to my stomach that we have a state that is valuing, folks that already have loads of money and making them richer in COVID and kicking people out of their homes and, getting their jobs lost. And it's ridiculous. And, in terms of climate change, if we care, if we had a moral government, we would be working day and night as legislators and not sleeping, honestly, because it's that urgent. Like, I want to get up there to start working the next day. I'm not just saying this to get myself elected. Like, that's why why else would a teacher? I was known only in Watts, Ron. People didn't know my name, but I felt the urgency of the movement, of myself, of living 2 miles from a refinery, of not having clean water. Even when I, as a teacher, wanted to make my tea at school, I would not go to the tap. I would have to go get filtered water. That's what made me think, why are the teachers drinking filtered water and our kids are drinking this every day? I mean, I'm running because it's a disgrace. And I'm not going to wait 2 more years to wait my turn. Someone told me at the beginning of this campaign, when I started in the primary, right? Some sort of consultant in the beginning, not the ones I have now, but like, oh, are you sure you want to run? Do you want to wait? Get your name more out there? No, I don't want to wait because our state is doing awful right now in treating its working class. I don't want to wait. And if I really felt like we had a chance, without getting our movement, it's not just me, right? Our voices up there, I wouldn't be running. But I really feel like we don't have that urgency up there. And look, we have a few good ones up in Sacramento. I can count them on one hand, though. That's it. Even if I can complete 5 of I don't know if I can name 5. Can think of like 2 or 3 right now. But that's not enough. And honestly, like, we have to not go up there. And the way we achieve this is we don't go up there and say, I'm part of the Democratic Party and I'm going to protect these. You know what's funny, Ron? There are legislators up there that know that Gibson, for example, my opponent, is not doing the right thing. They know that, but you don't hear them calling them out. They protect their own. Their own. Why are you more allegiant to the party than to who you're supposed to represent? What a concept. But
because
that's what
you want to keep your job. I mean, they want to keep their job. They want to keep the apple cart going. And it really is. I mean, the Democratic establishment and the Republicans do it too.
Yeah.
It's just with the Democrats, they have to be a little more sneaky about it because they're supposed to represent working people. That's the lie people are told. The Republicans, they don't need to be subtle about it.
Ron,
like,
can I say something? Sorry, I don't mean to go on a rant, but all these things. Okay. And I'm just going to put this out there, right? They weren't putting a lot of money into my opponent's race until they saw I was a real threat. And I heard through the grapevine that once they see you as the real threat, the Black Caucus up there will start putting in money to keep, I want to bring this up, to keep, as my opponent is a Black man, to keep him there. And to me, I've talked to, so many folks. I worked in Watts, so many Black leaders in my community. And this is not my voice right now, but they have said they're sick of identity politics. They know that people that look like them don't necessarily represent them. And this is not me saying it. This is them telling me this and me seeing that. So I think that's just a disgrace, especially if you are part of a community that's being marginalized right now. Wouldn't you want to have justice for your community, wouldn't that be the most important thing? You know,
Yeah.
shouldn't we go beyond identity politics? I mean, I think the people know that, but I just feel like the establishment right now doesn't understand that, because if they really cared about the black and brown community, they would want policies that they're asking for, not even that I'm asking for, that they're asking for, you
See,
know.
I actually think it's a little more sinister than that. I think and I'm not pointing at like a local, for instance, but I think
Yeah,
generally, looking at it broadly,
right.
they do understand that, because what they're doing is not just identity politics. I mean, identity politics on its own is not a bad thing. That just means like different
Yeah,
communities are
diversity. Yeah.
represented, and people in that community represent their community. That's not a bad thing. What's happening is identity politics is being weaponized for
Okay.
dishonest
Yes.
means,
Yes.
because they're just saying, well, just because this person looks like you,
Mm,
that automatically means they have your best interest at heart. Well, that's not always true.
yeah.
That's not always true. People
Hmm.
can be, deceptive, and people can, work for the corporations regardless of their skin color or background. That's not the be all and end all. And that's weaponizing identity politics for dishonest means.
Yeah, and I think that's manipulating voters. I mean,
Hmm.
thankfully, I think, like, yeah, I mean, we had a mailer sent out that said I'm not from the community. Like, I live here. My community,
And you're
our
a teacher there.
I'm a teacher here, and like honestly, I'll go out and say it. My opponent has an address here, but his neighbors have told me, I'll just say it, they've never seen him here. And it's true. It's what the neighbors are telling me when I canvassed, and so, I mean, I live here. I mean, I've been quarantined in my home in Carson. I mean, if people want to come see me, I'm here, so it's like, and I work in Watts, 15 minutes away in my district. And so that really hurts, because I really love my district so much. And like, to be made to feel like an outsider is really sad. And I want to say maybe it's a little xenophobic, because I'm Muslim and I wear hijab, and he's trying to use that, but honestly, part of why I wanted to live in Carson, I'm just going to shout out some love to my community right now, is the diversity of it. There's not many communities, Ron, in LA that are not like redlined, and you know what I'm talking about, but Carson, right now, all my neighbors, I have one neighbor that's Latino, one neighbor that's Black, one that's white, one that's Filipino, and like, it's beautiful. That's why my husband and I wanted to live in this house, because there's not many places we found like this, and that makes me so happy. I can walk out every day and just, I mean, see people from all walks of life. I love that about Carson. I love that about my community, and I think he shouldn't use that, because it's a beautiful, I mean, our community is it's multicultural, and that's what I like about it. And so I don't know what he's trying to say with that, but
Well,
anyway.
in full disclaimer, I don't know anything about your opponent. I'm not
Okay.
familiar. So, I'll just put that out there, that I
Right.
don't know anything about
Yeah.
him. But,
Yeah.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your